All right. So, what I want to talk about has to do with two opposing viewpoints, or some conflict that I found in my thoughts. So, it has to do with being as objective as you can and how that affects relationships. So, to give you a picture, I can be very understanding, and I can take someone can do something, and I seek to understand where they're coming from and why they did what they did. Now, when you go about doing that, sometimes it's not like you can necessarily see what's behind somebody's motivations. It's not like you can necessarily look at someone and say, oh yes, I know what they're doing. They're doing this because of this, that, and the other. Sometimes these things can be unexpected. And when someone affects you in that way, you'll say, well, why would this person ever do this? And an interesting, you have to take into account some things that you may not be able to see. A lot of times when it comes to our everyday lives, you can look at your own individual perspective and say, oh, this makes sense. I'm really upset about this because I've been exposed to this in my life. But when it comes to other people, there's this whole background that we're missing. We don't know what things they've been exposed to, and we don't know how every moment of their life has built their image of who they are. And we don't know how that plays out in their psyche in the background. So a lot of times you can have this issue arise where we can't necessarily know the intention or the reasoning behind somebody's actions, but we can guess. And that's just because we're all our own individuals. But when we do consider the different possibilities as to why someone may be doing the things that we find them doing, that may confuse us and may seem as though they shouldn't have done that thing. An issue arises in the person who thinks this way. I'm actually in reference to myself, because when you have that perspective and you attempt to be as understanding as possible, while it is a noble pursuit and it is nice that you would take the time to attempt to understand where someone's coming from instead of, rejecting them automatically, because there is a reasoning behind the actions of other people. There is a process that they went through to make the decisions that they did. And so it makes you wonder, what exactly caused them to make these decisions? What experiences came together, and what information were they looking at when they made these decisions that made them decide what they did? And so you can take somebody who affected you in a really negative way, and you can learn to appreciate that perspective. You can learn to say, I see why this person may have done this and why they felt it was the best thing to do. The only issue is sometimes when you become that objective and when you focus on trying to really get down to the nitty-gritty and find out why things happen the way they did, the problem you might run into is that it sort of causes you to validate everyone else's actions, and you may find yourself in a position where you don't necessarily have a reason to treat anyone else negatively because you understand where they're coming from. So that sounds nice, but the only problem with that is that if I've been affected negatively, it's probably best that I react to it, that I have a reflex to those negative behaviors, because otherwise you will allow life to sort of treat you a certain way, and you won't stand up for yourself particularly. And that can be the consequence, if you're not careful, of having an objective perspective. So it's really important first, I think it's really important that you understand where other people are coming from, and that even when you really don't like the situation you're in, you find a way to seek an understanding of why this has happened, how it has. And obviously you don't want to get too deep into paranoia, depending on what it is. You don't want to say, oh, it was my fault, or, oh, I could have done this or that or whatever. That thinking that way will not serve you whatsoever, but it may be helpful to understand other people and the intentions and motives behind other people. Because a lot of times people are trying their very best to make good decisions, and it's because of all the things they've been exposed to, and because of their background, and because of a lot of factors that we can't see that causes them to make the kinds of decisions they do. So it's first really important to see where other people are coming from, but beyond that, it's really important to recognize that you can still act the way you do, in a sense. Because if you sit there thinking, I can understand where this person is coming from, even though they've negatively affected me, I understand where they're coming from in this position. You can take that and say, I understand where this person is coming from. And then shortly afterwards, you kind of find yourself invalidating your own actions. Why would I be upset when I understand where they're coming from and what's causing them to act the way they do? Because it is important that a reaction is elicited, and I'll go further into that. Consider for a moment some of the bad things that have happened in life that have taught us some really, really beautiful things, really important lessons. A lot of times, if you don't have criticism, if you don't criticize, there's no progress. Struggle, conflict, criticisms, they breed results. Those things cause attention to be directed towards the issue or the problem. And so when it comes to people, if you're first understanding of where they're coming from, but then afterwards, you don't act on your own emotions and your own position, what this can cause is a lack of progress. So let's say someone treats you a certain way, and that person, you've only treated this person with respect, and you've always been amicable towards them. But now they've treated you a certain way, and you don't say anything. While it is important that you see where they're coming from, that way you can understand who this person is and what they're truly struggling with, it's also just as important to recognize that the way that you've been affected could have been handled differently. Now, I wouldn't say that it's good to reminisce on all the possibilities of things that could have gone differently, because if we do that, we'll spend our whole lives thinking about how things could have been better or how we could have done something else. And you're not living life if you're concerned with those things. So it's important, though, to validate your own position, to have a position. It's ideal to understand all sides, but still act on your own. This has been a pretty important lesson for me specifically. But what I've learned is that if you don't act on those things, if you don't act on your position, it's very discreet and we don't notice it. But when we act on our position and when we call out things that have affected us negatively, there is a progress that ends up happening. It's not something we can track, but it happens in that individual. They hear what you say, and those words will stick with them. And maybe they'll think about it. Maybe they'll change the way they see the world. Maybe not. But maybe years down the line, that'll be one story that they may have a conversation with someone else, and that conversation hits that subject in just the right way in their mind, that it reminds them of that moment years ago that they affected you the way they did, and now it all makes sense. And so we never really know, but there is in saying something, in calling out your opinion and your own individual position, there is a correction that you're helping. There's a process of things improving in society, in social interactions, in that individual's life as well. Consider this. Imagine that everyone was that understanding except one person. That person would treat everyone in a negative way, and everyone would be so understanding of that individual. So no matter how, if we follow this person around in their life and they treat everyone this way, everyone will be negatively affected, but when will that person learn to be better? When will that person learn to sort of, not like, just as an example or an idea, when will that person ever learn to not be so critical or not feel the need to trash other people? Like, what is it that causes that? And that's a lot of introspection that can change that person's life for the better. So even if everyone was that understanding and you could go about your everyday life trashing everybody and everyone was just understanding of you, you would never learn what's going on inside you and why you feel the need to do those things. So the point is, it's really important that we have this function of pointing out things that could be better. It's really important that we say, hey, I don't like this. Don't do this. I don't like when you talk to me that way, or whatever it may be. But what that does is it provides a function for growth for that other individual. Because while, you shouldn't expect that from anybody, it's not that you should ever say, something like that just so that you can watch that person question their lives. That's not the purpose. But it's important not only to stand up for yourself and set a standard for your own life. Because the issue with not having a standard is that things can happen to you and people can push you around, and you'll end up sort of, you'll kind of be put in the corner and dismissed in a way. So it's very important that you stand up for your position, and at the same time, that person may benefit as well. You bringing up the fact that you don't enjoy being treated that way, or whatever else it may be, you bringing your position to the forefront causes people to recognize the multifaceted nature of life, the fact that there are different perspectives, and that other people should consider how their perspective sort of entangles with everyone else's, and how their actions affect other people. And so it's important to have that position, because you're not only improving your own life, you're also improving other people's. There's a secret process happening in the background where you're actually improving society as a whole, because you're not only are you affecting your own individual life, but you're showing other people the way that they go about living their lives. And if you follow that further, those people going about living their lives, they now have a better education of their own self, and they know who they are and how they should treat people better. And they may even know the things inside them that the conflicts inside them that cause those things to emerge, or those behaviors to emerge. And if you've done that to one person, just one person, simply by stating how you feel about an idea, or simply by stating your position, If you've only affected one person that way, that person will go on and they'll act completely different than they did before. They'll have a new perspective on not only themselves, but other people as well. And so, in a way, just by going about your everyday life and pushing not only your own position, but recognizing others as well, you'll have a profound impact on how each individual that you've ever encountered will go about their lives. And even if it's small, even if it's not like you need to change their life. Even if you impact them on a very small and minuscule level, that's one behavior that's changed. And if that person's 20 years old and they have 80 more years of life, then how many interactions will that affect? And if you think about that in a much more expanded sort of way, how will that affect society's cultivation over time and how we treat each other? So it's a very important thing to recognize not only your own position, which has been the main focus in this conversation, but it's also very important to focus on other people and where they're coming from. I started this talk because for me, that's my problem, is I'm a little too understanding. And so it's probably better that I learn to have my own position, and I learn to recognize where I should act instead of be it's ideally you'll be understanding and you'll still act on your position. But most people are the opposite. A lot of times people are not very understanding, but it's important that you have both. Some people will be affected negatively by never standing up for themselves, and other people will often blame others and never think twice about what's going on in that person's life. You know, it's understandable to have some pain and some things that you've been affected by, and to react to that. Because when somebody else, attacks you or says something negatively about you, a lot of times our gut reaction is to react out of defense. And this makes sense. We're concerned that maybe, I guess the concern is that we sort of feel less about ourselves and we defend ourselves. If someone says, "Oh, this is all your fault. Oh, you shouldn't have done this." Or "You're stupid," or whatever it may be, just anything directed towards you in a negative way. A lot of times we'll come back at them. And it may be a number of things. It may be, "How dare you talk to me that way?" It may be, "I'm the stupid one? Really? Have you ever taken a look in the mirror?" Whatever it may be, we sort of feel this attack, and it affects us. And so we instantly feel the need to come back and to sort of defend ourselves. But a lot of times it's a good exercise to say, "I wonder what's caused that person to act like that towards me." Because it's not something we think a lot about, or most people think a lot about. But those people only have the motivation to treat you that way because they're compensating for something else. There's other things going on in that person's life that we're not aware of. And so to take a moment to think, what may be happening to this person, or what may this person be feeling that's causing them to come at me this way? Because now, if you recognize that this person is behaving the way they are, not because they actually think you're stupid, or not because they actually feel that way towards you, but maybe feeling that way towards you makes them feel a whole lot better about themselves. Maybe calling you stupid and
making you seem like you're stupid is a way to feel so much better about their own lives. Maybe they've been called stupid. Maybe they were raised to think they were stupid. Maybe they feel very, very incompetent in that region of their lives. And so if that's the case, and they're making up for that, calling you stupid might make them feel a whole lot better about their own worth and how smart or intelligent they are. So, the only reason people have those motivations is due to making up for something else. I don't know what those things are, but I do know that they exist. So when someone attacks me, or when someone comes at me, the question would be, what is this person dealing with? Maybe I can sort of help them through that, instead of reacting back to them. Because if they throw something at me and I throw something back at them, I'm not helping that issue that they're feeling, that thing that they're concerning themselves with. If I want to reduce the behavior of being called an idiot, then maybe it would be better to address the issue that's causing them to say that in the first place. I don't want to get too much into how to handle it, but I do think it's important that we recognize there's another side to life. There's another side to people. And many times we can get caught up in our own lives, and we can take things personally, but really think, why would someone treat me this way? And consider that there's a whole lot going on in their own lives. And, maybe we're not really open to considering that. Maybe we want to believe that we want to believe that people are doing this out of spite and not out of self-defense in a way. So the only way we could get past that idea is to ask ourselves, when we do something to somebody else, why we did it. And this can be difficult, because to say to someone else that they should do something, so for me to point out something about somebody else, or to give someone else a bunch of crap, to put someone down, if I do that and I take a moment to say, why did I just do that? We may be stubborn, and we may say, I did that because they're an idiot. I did that because this and that. But really take a moment. If we really look and we say, what could really be going on here? Is there something deeper that I'm not aware of? Because I think we think of things very simply. We think of things as this action came about simply because of what's going on right now. It's not the case. Your entire personality and your orientation towards life has so much behind it. So for you to treat someone a certain way, there's something else there. And I don't just mean that in negative terms. Even the way that you treat people positively has so much behind it. There's so much behind that action. So taking a moment when you find yourself treating someone a certain way, to take a moment and say, why is it that I've gone about doing it this way? Why is it that I had that reaction? What's going on inside me? What are the feelings that I have associated with this? Am I dealing with something here that's causing me to shoot this out into my environment? And that can be so beneficial to recognizing not only where people are coming from and understanding that people aren't just a bunch of buttheads, if you recognize or you question where people are coming from, there are a lot of great relationships that you can save, because there are a lot of people you care a lot about who may have done something that hurt you, and we push them away without really taking the time to say, why, what was this person hoping to do? And I think that it's important to recognize that at the core, people are trying their very best in life. People aren't out there, attempting to screw everyone else over. If they are, there must be a reason for that. There must be something there that's causing that orientation or those actions. So, going about, it's important when you go about doing this that you sort of recognize people are only doing what they know to do. They're only doing the best that they know how. And the way that may manifest may be so contrary to how you believe life should be lived. But recognizing where other people are coming from and what's guiding their decisions is really important. So that way you can save a lot of relationships that you care a whole lot about. You can understand where people are struggling or where what really may be going on in the background to cause the things they're doing to you. That way you can sort of be more helpful and be more considerate towards what they're struggling with. But at the same time, don't ever forget that you speaking and you having a voice is so important towards their own life and their own development, and recognizing that there's another side to this life. Because just like you may struggle with seeing the other side of life and seeing where other people are coming from and how they may be doing the best they can, it just doesn't seem like it from where you're standing. Just like that's difficult, it's just as difficult to recognize that, it's just as difficult for them, basically. It's just as difficult for them to see the other side of life when they're making these decisions. Sometimes it's hard to see beyond your own scope and to see how that's affecting other people. Because from your position, everything seems like it makes sense. But from their position, we have no idea how they're taking that. And so for you to voice your opinion is so important, because it shows them the perspective they're lacking, which is your perspective. But it's also just as important to question where other people are coming from. So this is a really important thing. You can be so understanding and you can have such an understanding orientation towards life, but you can forget about yourself, or you can be so stuck to yourself that you can forget about all the different multifaceted perspectives in life. So it's not about finding a balance per se, but it's learning where these two meet together, and where these two, being a person and having a perspective and an opinion and having been affected by life the way that you have, while also understanding why you've been affected that way and where those people are coming from. How are you supposed to make decisions if you're not considering yourself? How are you supposed to make good decisions if you're not considering others? It's so important to not only recognize and understand the different facets of life, but also your own facet of life as well. Thanks for watching.